Hello and welcome to Series 3 of Downs Your Way in association with Blues in Britain. Now, you may wonder why you've got me introducing the show today, and that is because the tables are turned. And today I want to welcome formerly the hostess with the mostess to her own show. Rebecca, hello and welcome.
Hello, 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 hello. Feels weird to be on the other side. I'm on the other side. Hello.
She's on the other side. So, today's chat will follow the normal format of an examination of life in the modern music business, which for you, of course, started as you're fond of telling people in most interviews, because you generally get similar questions, and that is, where did it all begin? So for you, I think teenager, many moons ago, and what was that like, and how did it affect you?
Well, it was, yeah, it's about age 12, just coming 13, I guess. I suppose for me was I hadn't found my tribe before then at all. I definitely considered myself as other, you know, all the while growing up. I didn't feel part of anything. There's lots of reasons for that, but I was interested in football, and at the time I was growing up, it was like, what's wrong with you? You shouldn't be interested in that. Um, and it was just, I never felt part of anything. So when I was sort of asked by Dan Coley, the drummer of that band who I'm still friends with at school, sort of came up to me and said, yeah, I've got a band, and sort of, want to get a singer in it. So apparently you can sing in that. So do you want to come in on audition? And it was, and from that moment, and I know I have spoken about it a lot, it was a turning point. It was a sliding doors moment. It was, okay, I finally feel, even if I still do feel other, I feel like I'm surrounded by other others and that they're my tribe. And also just the euphoria of singing with a band, because it is euphoric for me. So yeah, it all started from there, and the pain began. I'm joking.
Just about every office I've ever worked in has had one of those signs on it which says, you don't have to be mad to work here, but it helps. And I think for the first time in my life that the music business actually lives up to that.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And you have to definitely be slightly mad to, I don't, I probably shouldn't say that, but you do have to be, well, if madness is absolutely desperately wanting to be involved in something more than anything else in the world, and even more than your own personal well-being, I think that's maybe a form of slight madness. Others would say dedicated, but I think it could maybe sometimes cross the line. I think it probably has done for me on a few occasions.
Yeah, I'm sure that doesn't just apply to music. I think it applies to many passions, doesn't it? And particularly in the arts. You've always a songwriter, first and foremost a songwriter. And that's obviously very important to you. So can you tell us a little bit about what it means to be a songwriter and what impact it has in your life?
Um, I've always written songs, even before I couldn't write, I couldn't play an instrument. I used to, make them up on the infant school and, playground for people. And it's always, I was desperate to learn the guitar because I just thought, if I learn the guitar, it'll help me write all these songs that are in my head. Um, so it's always been there, kind of. Sometimes it's gone a bit dormant, or I've almost switched it off, because I've gone down another path, and I did try to be, quote, normal at one stage and do a normal job and have a normal life, and get a mortgage, and thinking about maybe starting a family and all that kind of thing. And although other things happened as well, many other things happened, one of the things that happened was I just thought, I'm not done with this. I can't, I can't, proceed in this life that I'm going down and then regret it to the detriment of others as well, because that's not fair. I've never wanted to be somebody that, kind of blamed their kids or even subconsciously sort of, or blamed their partner because they weren't doing what they wanted because they've got to get a certain job to provide to a mortgage. So yeah, there was a turning point where I just thought, I'm not done with this. And then I met Steve. So he's to blame. He's to blame for all this RD band stuff, without a doubt.
You sound like an addict who then met their favorite drug dealer.
That's kind of similar.
Uh, just tell me how songwriting kind of works for you, because I see in the industry very often I'll see something on Facebook or whatever which says, "Oh, we're going into the studio to write a new album," and I know you've never done that. So tell the good folk of podcast land how songwriting happens for you.
Well, for me and Steve, and we do, sometimes the original song idea comes from me, sometimes the original song idea comes from him, sometimes from both of us if we're in the same room together. But no, we're both very similar in the fact that we just write practically all the time. At the moment, getting the new album out and getting that ready, I think we've both shut it off a little bit. We just shut the door a little bit, and then we know as soon as that's over, it'll sort of reopen, and I'll be emailing and WhatsApping him random ideas that I've come up with, and he'll be doing the same to me, and then we'll be getting together and working on other stuff. It's just we're just that type of songwriter. I remember talking to Tony Clarkin of Magnum, and he was the same, and we had quite a few really good conversations about it, about the fact that we are like that. We're not, oh, let's book 3 months in the studio or 2 weeks in the studio, whatever it is, and just go in and just brainstorm it. For us, it's like a perpetual thing. It's always there pretty much, which is different to a lot of people I know.
Well, for anyone who's interested in pursuing that further, I commend Downs Your Way Series 1, Episode 5, which is about the song Stand on Your Feet and the journey of that song from an original idea on a piano when a student didn't turn up, right through to the finished product. And it describes in great detail how the Downs Birkett partnership works. So, I would make an obvious comment here. You're obviously female, aren't you? It sort of shows,
Well, it has been said,
allegedly. Uh,
allegedly.
there's a lot written and spoken about females in the music industry. So, what's it like from your point of view? And like the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between?
I mean, it's a very interesting place. I think it continues to be an interesting place for all artists, but I think especially female. Um, Obviously, I can only really talk about the scene that I'm involved in. I think as well, asking me that is completely, obviously everyone has a different perspective on it, but I think because I started off life as a tomboy. I still am really. I know I'm covered in makeup and I've got dyed blonde hair and all the rest of it. But in my heart, I still am. I'm still that tomboy. So I'm kind of the way I present myself on stage and maybe off stage can sometimes be slightly different to how some of the other women on the scene present themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the way I do it, and there's nothing wrong with the way they do it if it's different to mine. It's just, it is a difference, I suppose, asking me, because I do have kind of a different perspective. I think, um, because of that, and because of lots of other things, personal insecurities about the way I look, that has inhibited, I think, sometimes my interaction and networking skills with regard into. If you can hear scraping in the background, by the way, it's Ralph trying to dig to Australia. That's Ralph, my dog. Right, stop it, Ralph. That's how much he doesn't want to listen to me going on. So because of kind of the background and where I've come from and my own personal insecurities, as I say, about the way I look and all the rest of it, which, that could be a podcast in itself, and I don't really want to go into all that detail. It'd be terribly boring for people. Um, I do and have found it hard to network, I think, in probably a way that may have helped me further. I've also, found it extremely hard to put myself in situations where uh, I have to maybe schmooze a little bit. I can be really nice, I think, because I think I'm quite a nice person. I would hope people would say that when they meet me, I'm a nice person, but I'm not very good at like the schmooze bit. And I think that's sometimes, not all the time, been expected a little bit. Like there's been some instances where, and Mark Eade would rightly say, well, that's it, that's part of the deal. And, I don't disagree, Mark. I'm just saying, like, what I've found personally difficult. I think sometimes, an example I could give, and I'm not going to name any names, obviously, is like, bumping into somebody that runs a festival and at another festival or at a gig, and them sort of waving a carrot under your nose, sort of going, oh, I bet you'd like to play blah, blah, blah festival, wouldn't you? We should have a chat. You should call me. We should meet for a coffee. We should arrange. And I just have always thought, well, why? I mean, I don't mind talking to you. Of course I don't. I would rather, this is somebody not in Birmingham, by the way, and me not living by them. I would rather it be through Colin, through you, because I can't tell you what our fee is and how much it's going to cost to get us there with the petrol and all that sort of thing. And I've just felt that sometimes they didn't really getting me a slot on the festival equated to me becoming not just, well, establishing some sort of very friendly relationship. Maybe not over friendly, maybe not. I'm not saying anyone was looking for anything naughty, but a closeness with me and a friendship with me that, I know this sounds awful, but I've got so many, I'm very lucky. I've got loads of friends and I very rarely have time to see them. And I'd rather it remain business on that level. As I say, I'm friends with so many people. So many people message me and I try to get back to all of them. But that it was kind of like, well, if you become friends and schmooze me, then I'll get you a place on the festival. That was kind of, and I just, I find that as well, because of my personality, I can be nice because I think I'm nice, but I find it very hard to be disingenuous. So I couldn't just form a friendship relationship with someone just because I thought it was going to get me on a festival. And having spoke to some of my male counterparts about this, it didn't seem to happen to them in quite the same way, from what they've told me anyway. So there's elements that I've found quite tricky at times. Um, so that's definitely one of the things, and I think most people, who've booked us, know that I'm not saying I don't want to talk to people. Of course, I want to talk to people, but I don't want to do it as a transactional thing to enable us to get a slot on a festival or play at their venue, if you know what I
Do,
mean.
yes, I do. I mean, do you feel that female leads get sort of more comparison than equivalent males do?
I would say yes, and I've never quite understood it because I don't think, yeah, our male counterparts do. And again, because I'm kind of still a tomboy, a lot of my friends are male, and a lot of my friends are in the music scene. Um, so we talk a lot about this, and they've always said it's way harder. It's way harder for you females to, to get on. There's just so much demanded of you that, and you kind of put under scrutiny and competition with each other, where we're not. And I think, again, one example comes to mind. I mean, I don't feel I'm in competition with anyone because you're not in competition with anyone. You're on your own little journey with, with your own life and your own music, and so is everyone else. And, God love them, continue. But I remember, and this is coming from a woman, so a female promoter, and we got there to the gig, and she said, "Oh, by the way, the support's another female." Ooh. And I said, "Oh, okay, great." And she went, "Ooh, what do you think about that?" And I went, "I think it's great." I said, "What do you want us to do? Fight it out?" It's like, what the hell? Like, what the hell? And you just think, it's going, and that was from a female saying that. So it's, believe me, I'm not man hating at all. It's such a bizarre thing. I'm like, what? And in fact, on that gig, our lovely, amazing drummer, Neil Ablard, I said to him, "Is there any?" Because we were doing the PA and sort of sorting in ears and all that, and monitors. He wasn't sorting front of house. And I asked him very politely if he would help her out to set up her monitors. Well, of course I would. And of course he would help because he's brilliant. Like, but this promoter was like, almost like thinking, oh, he's going to put the cat amongst the pigeons. You're like, what? Are you all right? Do you need counselling? Have you got issues you're not talking to somebody about? So it does happen like that. And I think the comparisons come from others, not from inside the scene, and that's kind of the problem. And you also get the kind of thing where you wouldn't really, it's very rare you get a female artist following another female artist on a bill, either
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
festival or whatever. And again, I think that has something to do with like that. Oh, well, you can't, well, the other thing about you can't have two on a bill, that's like too much as well. So,
Well, I think that creates an opportunity to segue into another question I had for you, really, which is that what's the strangest thing that's ever happened to you during your artist career? Because
oh,
I,
it's a good one. It's a really good one.
well, it's a loaded question because, of course, I know some of the
It's
strange things
so
have happened to you,
good.
but it just an opportunity to ventilate for you, really.
But it's so good. I have dined out on this story to my students, to classes, to other lecturers, to other. It's given me a lot. So yeah, this the strangest thing that happened, and yes, at the time, I was very, very upset by it. I'll say that. I know I've sort of grown out of that now, and I've sort of used it to my advantage, but it did really upset me at the time. Um, I was having a transaction, a business transaction regarding a guitar element. I won't go any further than that because I don't need to guess, don't want people to sort of try searching for who it is. And I'd paid for this said guitar element. I'd sent it by PayPal, and the PayPal bounces back. The money comes back to me. I'm like, what? What the hell?
Can I just interrupt and say there's a nuance to this? This is someone you had previously dealt with for a similar guitar element, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, and everything was fine.
Yeah.
And again, someone that had been messaging me, not on a dramatically, like every minute level, but I'd had some correspondence with what I thought was friendly messaging, what I presume people would expect me to do, which is when you're dealing with someone that is providing you with something for your instrument, that you would be polite, that you would be friendly, all of that sort of thing. And so I thought this was just friendly bants, friendly banter and whatnot. As I say, it was on a very surface level. And then I get this payment bounce back. So I think, well, the order's not gone through, what's happened? And I message this man and I get this message back, which I didn't even know what to do with. It said that I'm very sorry, I've had to return your payment. I mean, I could get it on my phone, but I'm not going to. I've had to return your payment and I can't work with you anymore. I mean, this work was like minimal. It was a part for a guitar, okay? So we didn't work together. He was in another part of the country. Um, and oh, by the way, again, he'd approached me to see if I wanted this part for the guitar when he'd seen me at a festival in another part of the country. So he'd established the contact. He said, I'm sorry, I can't, do business with you anymore, and I can't be in touch with you anymore. I do believe, I'm kind of, I don't know whether I'm phrasing it right. I do believe you are possessed by the devil. You are possessed by the Jezebel spirit. You have entrapped me, or some words that, and I can't stop thinking about you, and it's your fault. You need to see a priest or someone like that. I can't remember what exact words he said because and you need to seek help for this because I can't sleep at night for thinking about you, and it is your fault. It is this demon that has possessed you, that is making me behave in this way. And I remember thinking, because I forwarded it on to you straight away because I was
Mm.
so shocked. I was so shocked. And the more I thought about it, the more shocked I was because of what it actually implied, which was, if you think about it on a broad, a broad spectrum, what it actually says is, if I see a woman in the street and I feel a certain way towards her, because if we take this to the nth degree, and I feel an attraction towards her that I can't deny, that is her fault. So it kind of says I'm innocent of all things if I seek out a woman too much, if I approach her, if I do something to her, perhaps. It's not my fault, Governor. She's possessed by the Jezebel spirit. And I remember thinking of all the things. I mean, going back to the tomboy thing and the way I present myself on stage, as I say, which is fine. People present themselves the way they feel comfortable. But all I'm saying is, I don't wear the low cut tops. I don't wear a short skirt. All those kind of things, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm just saying I don't do them. So I'm not sending out a message that says, you know what? I'm bloody Jezebel spirited now, I am. I tell you what, you come near me, mate. That's it. You're a goner. You won't be able to think of anything else. My demon inside is gonna possess. I mean, I'm wearing a bloody baggy t-shirt, Colin, and a pair of jeans. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to say it was quite, it was, it in a period of time where it set a very high bar for strange things.
The bar is it's quite.
Yeah, it's very high. We could probably do an entire podcast on strange things if truth be told. I have to say that it was
Might
an
be too
extraordinary,
traumatic.
well, but for both of us probably, it was a very strange thing, and I have to say the Music Managers Forum guide to management did not have any reference to such stuff.
Oh, but Colin, can you tell the listeners how you responded? Because it was absolutely brilliant.
Oh, I honestly can't remember. I mean, I remember
I can.
drafting something which basically, yeah, just. I mean, I actually pointed out to him that the extent to which he'd upset you. I remember doing that. I remember saying that this is, basically this is your problem, not hers. You feel this compulsive attraction. Yet how dare you dump it on her? Was basically the essence of what I said. I mean, you may remember some other nuances that I've forgotten, but I was go on then.
Yes, because you said as well, which was great, because we'd had two people in the band as Deps that had been, one had been a pastor and the
Oh,
other,
yeah, sorry to cut across you. Yeah, because of course what we didn't say about this was that part and parcel, well, at least sorry if you have, but I don't think you said this guy confessed to having a significant Christian faith.
yeah.
And this was part of his problem, that here he was as a committed Christian with presumably following clear Christian ideals, and is compulsively attracted to you and it was all wrong and it was all kind of your fault. So yes, I said in the response that I said we have two people of considerable faith in the band. Um, and I said, neither of those seem to have felt the compulsion that you have.
The
So,
Perhaps they've got like a Jezebel spirit shield.
shield, yeah,
You know, like we
presumably.
had in COVID, some people had face shields. Perhaps it's
Yeah,
like that, but we
yeah.
just don't know.
Well, that was that. Yes, that was a great one, and it's number one in a hit parade that
Yeah.
has some many others in, but we really haven't got time to go into now. But maybe one day, maybe if we ever sign off from the music business, we can go down in
Go down
blazing
in flames,
flames,
baby. Yeah.
recounting all the tales. So looking back, how do you think the scene's changed since the RD band started?
It's changed a lot, I have to say. It has changed a lot. But how, I hear you cry. I'm
Oh,
just going
yes.
to tell you, I say. Not necessarily on like, the bands are still out there playing, all the rest of it, like, a lot of the gigs are still there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But what's changed is, so when we started out, there was a lot of in-print magazines that were actually newsagents, not just subscription. Not knocking subscription magazines, I'm just making the point. So, you'd go into WH Smith, you'd see a guitarist magazine in there, drummer magazine in there, bassist magazine in there, classic rock magazine in there, the blues magazine in there, run by the same company, Power Play magazine. I'm gonna miss some, but there was a few,
Mm,
and you would see them in there. They weren't just just lurking about in some random places. They were there. That has totally changed. When we came back from a gig the other week, I did a little video. It's still on my phone. I'm going to put it up of all the magazines in the WH Smith in the service station. And we all know service station WH Smith, they've got 300 magazines. They've got a lot of bloody magazines. And they've got tractors, they got tanks. Um, I think, they got crochet. You know what I mean? They got the lot and a bag of chips, but I tell you what, they hadn't got. They hadn't got one music magazine. And I've only just spoken about the magazines that were for this kind of scene, the rock and rock blues. So I'm not
mm,
talking about all the other ones,
mm,
that have disappeared. There was not one. So that is massive. The other thing that is different is that um, the magazines, because there was, more of them as well, you could get in them easy. Well, not easy, but it was there was easier routes into them.
mm,
Um, there was connections you could make with the people that wrote a lot of the articles. And yeah, it was a completely different scene. Also, Radio 2, Paul Jones was on Radio 2. You obviously, Paul Long was his producer, and they were very attainable in a really great way. Like, again, you could contact them, and if you were on the scene, they would know about you and they'd try and give you a spin. No money would exchange hands, I want to say. There'd be no money for radio pluggers or anything like that. It would be a really organic, really nice process, of like people on the scene supporting others on the scene because they had a radio show on Radio 2.
mm,
Um, and of course, I mean, it's still there, that radio show, but it doesn't, I'm not knocking it at all, but doesn't seem the relationship there seems to have a I know it's attached, a little bit to the UK Blues Awards, but it seems more removed um, to me, and it doesn't seem to reflect the scene like it used to. It may have something to do with the UK Blues Awards but personally, and spoken to others, but you'd have to ask them as well, I just don't think it's not as in the scene as it was before. It's not quite as
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the critical difference is that, you would actually see Paul Jones out on the circuit, wouldn't you? I mean, I can
yeah,
remember once met him at the Robin 2 and actually handed him a copy of your album, the Believe album.
yeah. I went up, knocked on the door, and said, "Hi, Paul. And he said, "Oh, I know who you are." And I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay." I said, "I hope that's a good thing and not a bad thing," or something like that in
Mm,
my
mm,
usual
mm,
Wolverhampton accent.
mm.
And yeah, he said to me, "Have you got a CD for me?" And I said, "Of course I have." And I produced one straight away. And he played it.
Yeah,
And he'd
yeah,
listened to it and he played it. So what I'm talking about is, yeah, that kind of relationship. I'm not putting down Keris Matthews. I'm just saying it's a
yeah. It's
different
not
kind
a
of
bit of a
relationship
relationship.
now, I would say.
And what about sort of festivals and gigs and that's kind of scene? How have you seen that change?
Well, a lot of festivals have gone. A lot of great festivals have gone. Obviously, the one I've got to mention are, obviously the Butlins ones, Skeggy, Minehead. They were great festivals. They were
Mm,
great on so many levels. They paid the bands properly. They put us up. They offered us accommodation. There was a lot of people there. Um, and the people there were music lovers. They weren't people there just to get drunk and have a good time, which if they were having a good time, they just didn't have to get drunk to do it. They were there to listen to the bands and to support the bands, buy merchandise, talk to the bands. That's what they were there for. Unfortunately, if they'd have been there to just get absolutely out their face at the bar, those festivals might still be going. Obviously, they'd have never been so good because that's not what a music festival's about. You're there to listen to the music. But what Butlins have gone with is like the stag and hen kind of approach where we just want loads of people to spend loads of money at the bar, get out their heads because that's how we make their money. Because all of those, the Giants of Rock and the Great British Rock and Blues Festival, they were always sold out. But what Butlins, I think, said was probably going, am I going to get arrested for this? Am I going to get a lawyer come at me for this? But what we've heard is that, sure, it was sold out, but where like a couple would take over a chalet there with the stag and hen weekends, 6 to 8 people will be in that same chalet, and
mm,
that six
mm.
to eight people will be getting absolutely off the face and eating the food. So it adds up to way more money for them. So yeah, that's a shame. There's been a few festivals as well that have gone in the last couple of years for different reasons, and it's yeah, a lot has changed, I think. And I think after COVID, as I've said, I've discussed with others on other episodes of the podcast, probably not quite come back as we sort of expected it. Um, I remember Stephen Stanley saying that. For me, I think I haven't seen that much change to our gigs, but I think on a festival basis, I think I have. I think it's always been um, it's always been work for an artist, unless they are very, very big or they've got a lot of money for PR and advertising. It's always been hard work to get people to gigs because you've got to compensate for the lack of money and the lack of advertising. So you've
Mm.
got to keep sort of coming up with different ways and so
Yeah,
yeah. So I haven't seen that much change for us, apart from I think we're doing less as well because of a lot of venues kind of want to go on a door share or their fees incredibly low, and we just can't pay the guys with those fees. So, but for the ones that we're doing, I think for me, it's always involved me really digging in because I know we haven't got money for advertising, so I've got to really sort of get behind the gig.
yeah. I mean, I think what this series has shown, if there's one kind of take home, is that there is an audience demographic associated with this scene And in the 10 years that you've been here or thereabouts, it's got older, and it's not being replaced from newcomers. So it's inevitably getting smaller, sadly, at the top end, but also people getting to a point where they don't want to go out so much. So it's not just people sort of dropping off the perch. It's people changing their approach. And I think that's a major factor. Many people have mentioned this. We're just not seeing the 20 and 30 somethings coming onto the scene to replace in the numbers that would replace those that have left. And I think that's the biggest change, along with, all the other things we've discussed, loss of CDs and impact of streaming and blah blah blah. But I think that's all been pretty heavily hammered in this series, hasn't it, to be honest? So we ought to probably move on. One of the big things of the current scene is social media. I've already said digital was the cause of a solution to all life's problems, but you could apply that quote to social media. I suppose it's an extension. It's just a subset of digital, really, if you think about it. It is the means by which independent artists can get out there, but it comes with its challenges. And I suppose the question is, how do you deal with it? How do you manage it? How do you manage the challenges it presents you?
I think you've got to have a set of boundaries, and I talk to the students about this a lot. I think you've got to think about what you're putting out. Try not to get into the frame of mind, although it's very difficult. You've got to put something out every day. Put something out when you've actually got something to say and you've got something to sort of, to put out there, rather than trying to just come up with stuff, I think, sometimes. Although I know it's different for sort of establishing bands that are just coming on the scene. You need to push the noise out a little bit harder. I think also, but we've talked about that a lot in other podcasts, kind of like the pressures of that. I think the other flip side of that, which I would like to mention, because I know I sort of touched on it with Chantel, is the troll sort of element, which does come up a bit. And when we're talking about social media, or we're talking about kind of every platform that somebody could comment on. So that's actually quite a lot. Although we haven't got an active Twitter profile, you could list Twitter, my personal Facebook, the Facebook page for the band, the Facebook group. God bless you. I love the Facebook group so much. You are my heart. Instagram, Blue Sky,
YouTube.
YouTube, Threads, TikTok, sort of. So I'm kind of thinking 9 there, roughly 9. Obviously, that's Messenger as well on both Facebook page and mine. So actually, that's 11.
Well, you can add email.
Email.
We get
It
email
just goes on and
correspondence.
on. It goes on and on. And that connectivity is very important. I think sometimes, though, it can be obviously a lot of the messages and the comments, the large majority of which, the huge large majority of which are positive and actually give me life. Like they actually, and I'm sure Steve as well, they some of the people that follow us, the majority of people that follow the band are unbelievably wonderful people and incredibly supportive. On platforms that are not so the connectivity is not so great, kind of like YouTube, where people think they're commenting on something that the artist will never see. It's just their YouTube video. They're never going to see that. I mean, actually, I don't get notifications on that because it's a Vivo channel. Colin does. We've set it up that way because actually I don't want that in my life. Because if there is going to be a bit of a crap comment, to be honest with you, unless we put a Facebook advert out, and I'll talk about that in a minute, 9 times out of 10 it'll be on a YouTube video, because people can be they can hide behind a fake account, They, they don't have to have the name there. They can just make up any old Gmail account and log into YouTube and put a crappy comment and then swan off. Or sometimes, they'll put a crappy comment and it's their own channel. And then you go to their own channel and they're a pretty crap guitarists themselves, actually. And guess what? They've switched all the comments off on their videos, but they're commenting on mine and others in a really negative way. How brave. How brave of you. Oh, and no, we don't delete those comments. I leave them there. We leave them there. And, they're staying there. And we have had a few, okay, I'm going to make this guy famous. I can't remember who he is. No, I'm only joking. But make him famous. I mean, oh my God. But give him a bit of notoriety. I'm not going to name him. So, yeah, we released, a cover of a Slade track. It's a dark, moody cover. I understand some people don't like creative covers. I totally get that. I actually do. Is why I did one. I think sometimes they can take a song into another lease of life. And also for the artist, not that Slade need it, the more the money goes to them, by the way. And there was some comments on that. And I've directed some of my students to go and have a look because we were talking about sort of bad comments the other day. And one was, one comment is just legendary. And the amount of time, again, I've got a lot of mileage out of this comment. Said everyone involved in the production of this cover should be taken out and shot. I said that in my lecture literally this week, Monday. And everyone was like, oh,
Yes.
oh my God, Rebecca. And I'm like, yeah. I said, but you look at his channel, you can't comment on any of his videos. So, yeah, again, another brave soul. But he's entitled to his opinion. Absolutely entitled to his opinion. But what I said to my students is what I'd say to everyone. There's lots of music being made out there that I really don't like. I don't like it at all. I think some of it's crap. Would I, in my busy love, I've got a busy life, but it's a brilliant life, I have to say. I love my teaching. I love my music. I love people, the people that are involved in my life. I'm very lucky to have. If I don't like something, I'm just going to move past it because I haven't got the time or the inclination to put anyone down or to say, I don't like this. Well, no, I mean, I don't, there's a lot of things I don't like. You know, I mean, I don't like real milk, do I, Colin? Really, rubs me up the wrong way, that does. But a lot of people would hate soya milk. So I know, let's all have a fight about it. No, let's not. Let's all just move past. So I was trying to point out to my students the bizarre nature of social media and its comments. People think they're kind of untouchable. They try and make themselves untouchable. But actually, what they're doing is just showing themselves to be a type of person. Because if you're happy in your life and you're content, you wouldn't say anything like that because you don't have to. If you don't like it, you don't listen to it. That's it. It's
I
really simple.
Yeah, I mean, I can see, yeah, that's true. And also, I think the other issue with social media is just the relentlessness of it, isn't it? It's I accept what you say about not necessarily needing to be there on there every day, but there's still a pretty high demand for presence and exacerbated really in a way by something that's come up a couple of times on the podcast, which is that however hard you try, for whatever reason, not everybody gets to see the message you're trying to put out there.
Absolutely not. And that's been, made perfectly clear on a number of occasions when, sometimes I think, oh my God, I banged on about this gig too much. People are going to be like, shut the hell up, Rebecca. And we know about that gig on that date. And then that gig, the pictures will go up from that gig. And somebody will message me and go, oh my God, I didn't know you were playing there. And you're like, how do, and it's not their fault and it's not our
No.
fault, but you just think, how can I bridge that gap? And to be honest, you probably can't, you probably can't bridge it. If they're subscribed to the email list, great. Obviously, that is a communication method as well. And I know me and you, Colin, stress out about that because everyone says don't send out too many emails. But when you do, put some reading in it, stuff that's happened, not just like one paragraph. So we don't, if you subscribe to the email list, you will not get an email every day. You won't get one every week. You won't get one every 2 weeks, like once a month, something like that, right?
Well, to be fair, they have had
They've
two
been
in
a
the
bit
last.
more, yeah, they've been a
Yeah,
bit
they've had
more
two this
frequent,
month.
but we
Funnily
are
enough,
releasing an
yeah,
album.
yeah, we're releasing an album. Yes, did you hear that,
But
everybody? We're releasing an album.
releasing an album. But someone will, or at least one person will always unsubscribe
Oh yeah,
every time we send out, and it like makes us feel like, what? Are we sending out too much? Are we sending out not enough? Are we not enough? Are we not too much? What have we said? Have we upset them? And then
no,
you
it's
just
always
think, you know
yeah.
what? It doesn't matter, does
No,
it?
it doesn't. No, but it is funny. I always sort of look at that and think, yeah, here we go. I'm sending out an email. This will prompt some people to unsubscribe. Um, we've talked about trolls. We've talked about social media, the frustrations, obviously, and it's come up in previous podcasts from others. Mark Eade in particular was very strong on this. The impact of the general frustrations of the music business on artists' mental health. So, what do you do to manage yours in this environment?
I mean, I think it's always something that I've really, really struggled with. I've never ever said anything um, on social media. I've never really like spoken about it. That's because that's just my prerogative. Again, that's just me. Um, there's many reasons for that. Um, I don't want my dad to see it. I'm going to be honest. He probably won't listen to these podcasts. He doesn't know what podcasts are. And if you are listening, Dad, soz. But if it's on social, if it's on Facebook, he's going to see it. I don't want him to get upset. I don't want him to, I've never wanted, or before he was even on Facebook, I thought somebody might tell him. Also, I feel really, I am quite a personal person. And also, I feel like a lot of other people are struggling with stuff as well. And, you know, what right do I have to sort of to go on and like moan and all the rest of it? You know what I mean? Not moan, but so yeah, I have struggled, and I kind of think with our social media and with gigs and with people coming to see the band, I kind of want to lift them up. I don't want them to sort of come thinking, oh God, I'll go and see Rebecca and oh, she's been through so much, or I don't want that. That's just me personally. I want them to come, I want them to have a great time. I want them to be transported somewhere else because of the music. I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about our music, mine and Steve's music, and the band performing it. Um, but yeah, it is something I've really struggled with because I don't know anyone that's a creative person is always you're putting your work out there and you're putting yourself out there. And when you do see a bad comment, I'll be totally honest. I probably shouldn't be, but it is like somebody's punched you squarely in the gut. The
Mm.
tears come straight away. You're fighting them back, and then you're trying to bring yourself down, thinking, oh, it's just some person sat behind a screen. It's just, so when we do an advert or something like that on Facebook and it goes out to lots of people, not just, the people that follow the page or the group, there's always some really nasty comments on there, attacking me personally, the way I look, attacking the music. And especially because I've grown up with a myriad of insecurities about the way I look. That is, yeah, that ain't easy. That ain't easy. I've lived with it. And I continue to live with it. I don't like it. But I guess in a way it's toughened my resolve. I think I rebound quicker from seeing a comment that is really derogatory and offensive. I do rebound quicker. I work through that sort of punch in the gut feeling and the tears, I fight the tears back quicker, and I come back quicker from that. But I don't think it'll go away. In fact, I think with the way the world's going at the moment, and I think it'll probably get worse, if anything. I think people just feel they have a right to say whatever they feel to
Mm.
anyone, really, which is
Well, sadly, that's true. I think it's only fair to give you credit though for something that you probably wouldn't want to say yourself in a way, but you have focused on this and worked on it. You're not, it's something that you've thought about carefully, and how you react to things, and studied yourself, and tried to uh, I would say change isn't the right word, but try to adapt and understand what impacts you, why it impacts you. You have focused a lot on that, and I think that's really important, because I admit, as an outsider, when I first came into this scene, I'd kind of seen people spilling their guts on social media from the music scene, and I used to sit there and think, well, yeah, that's all very well, mate. I get the whole bit about the tortured artist, but what about the poor sod who's stuck doing a menial job because they can't get a better one, or they've been passed over promotion 6 times? Everyone has their burdens. Every life, every career has its challenges. Having been around it now for the 10 years or so, I do have more sympathy for you guys, because I think it is a more naked experience to put yourself out there than working in an office and trying to climb the ladder. But I still think there's a balance to be struck as to how much of gets shared. Um, and yeah, of course, if it drives the music, you'll talk about it. But I think it's also important for people to reflect on themselves and how the world impacts them, and to kind of work on that, because it impacts us all negatively in different ways, and it's just really how you adapt and thrive, really.
no,
um
absolutely, and yeah, thanks for that. And so it's useful for me when I'm with my students, who are they're HE students, so they're not kids, to sort of share with them some of that, and share with them some of the experiences, and also some of the way that it's hurt me, and some of the ways that I've dealt with it, and the way I think good ways of dealing with it, because you can't shut yourself away, and you can't shut yourself away from it, and sort of talking about it in an open forum, really. I think um especially speaking to Chantel, she'd had some kind of, yeah, some derogatory comments said about her appearance as well. And I think being, I mean, everyone knows I'm big mates with Alan Nimmo. I really don't think, I'll ask Alan, but I really don't think he's had that much negative comments about his appearance. There's nothing
I
wrong with, there is nothing wrong with Alan's appearance. Ow.
you might
But
think twice.
I
Might think
really,
twice about. I'd think twice about commenting on Alan Nimmo's appearance, even behind the protection
he
of a
looks
keyboard and a screen.
amazing. He looks amazing, but I'm just trying to draw a
Yeah,
comparison. That's
yeah.
somebody that I know really well, and I don't think he's had that to that degree. I really don't think he's had it. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to ask him.
We're sort of time's cracking on, so there's just a couple of other things I'd like to ask you, really. I mean, you've talked a lot about teaching. The whole podcast series has been about, trying to make a go of music in the current environment. So, talk to us about your life in music. What does it involve? And what do you do really? What do you do in a normal week, and how do you manage the various balances?
I panic and I run around going, ah. No, I don't. I've got sort of like, I teach at a couple of universities in Birmingham, which, I mean, I cannot put into words how much I love teaching those students. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes they drive me mad and I tell them that. But on the whole, I find it the most uplifting experience, I think I've had to date, actually. They're amazing, creative, wonderful, beautiful young human beings, and I adore them. And it's a privilege to teach them. Um, so there's a lot of that. And if anyone has worked in education, you know that there's an awful lot of work that goes on prior to arriving in a classroom or a lecture. So there's a lot of prep that goes on for those lessons, a lot of research. I'm also engaging on an academic qualification myself at the moment. Um, so that's taking some time, some another qualification that I thought might as well, um, which is very interesting and is giving me a lot of food for thought. Um, I also teach privately on Zoom at the moment, vocal lessons. I also kind of help people with songs and songwriting. Um, I mentor students. I go and I work with Steve in the week. So we go and work on whatever we've got to work on at that time, whatever that may be. I'm creating things for social media. I'm looking after going around and sorting out my dad and his shopping and stuff like that and changing his bed. Very rock and roll, very glamorous. Um, I've got my
This for the reference, ladies and gentlemen, this Rebecca puts a day a week in at her dad's and has done that effectively ever since really the start of COVID and her mother's dementia diagnosis. And it's a fantastic commitment, and it's absolutely right that she should do it. But I just take my hat off to her really for having that degree of commitment. Finding time in a very, very busy week to do that is huge credit to you for that.
I appreciate that. I really do. Um, I remember one of the troll comments actually being about my mother's dementia. So that's how bad it can get, guys. That did tip me over the edge a little bit. But moving on. So it's a busy week. I also try to fit in, I'm also sort of writing songs. I'm looking at my guitar there. Um, there's so many things going on at any one time. We're doing the podcasts, we're recording them, there's always things that we need to be doing. We write for the column in Blues in Britain magazine, you know, there's a lot going on. I try and see as many friends as I can, but that is, it has to be scheduled in.
Just going back to the songwriting thing, there probably won't be an obvious edit in this or on the video, but had there been, there is a very high probability that she would have put her hand up halfway through and said, "Can you stop it a minute?" And you'd see her scuttle across the room and pick up the guitar, and there'd be hey, and the phone would go on with that, and then 5 minutes later, okay, we can carry on now. Sorry, I just had a song idea. I just had a song idea. That is yeah,
Classic Downs.
that's the creativity in action, isn't it? Okay, finally, then you've talked about your students. We talked about the podcast and what's that's covered. So, what's your advice for anyone starting out in music now?
My advice to all my students is everything that you do must be based in reality. So everything that you do. So if you want to release an album or an EP or a single, you've got to measure where you are before you release it, and you've got to measure all the gains that have grown from that on your social media, on the streaming, on the sales, etc. Because otherwise, if you don't measure and stay in reality, you're going to sink very quickly mental health wise, because you're going to think, well, that single just went nowhere. It did nothing and it sank without a trace. No single does that. You need to look at the metrics. You need to look at your starting point. You need to look at your starting points on social media. And if you gained one follower, if you gained two more streams than you did the last time, And they're obviously real people streams, not bot streams. I keep telling them, don't fall into that trap, because then you can't measure what's going on. You've no idea, and your algorithm's been destroyed. So reality, keep your head in reality. Don't get pushed along with, I want to be famous and I want to play Wembley. Darling, we all wanted to play Wembley. We all wanted to do those things. But if that's all that you're thinking about, everything else is going to fall as flat as a fart, and it's going to really affect you. You've got to celebrate your little journey and every step of it. And you've got to look at that journey and look at the metrics and look at what's worked and what hasn't worked, and look at it from a logical point of view. Because otherwise, if your head's in the clouds all the time, just dreaming about that day that you're supporting Lonely Young or Guns N' Roses or whatever it is, you're always going to be feeling that you're falling short. And I also say that probably a career in music is probably going to be part of a portfolio career that encompasses music.
As your good self.
Yes.
That has been excellent. Thank you very much indeed. I hope you've enjoyed the experience of being interviewed on your own podcast. I'm now going to do one or two minor boring things, and then you can actually say goodbye, because this actually, ladies and gentlemen, is the last scheduled episode, episode 13. Now, we have had a request to do a sort of highlights reel, which I actually think is a very good idea. The only thing is it's going to take quite a lot of work, and I'm not quite sure when we're going to have time to do that, because we are, if you didn't know already, working on the release of a new album. And that, for an independent operation, has been a major piece of work, and will continue to be, because we've still got a lot to do. But notwithstanding that, I would like to do that at some point. So there may be a bonus episode 14 appearing sometime, but not immediately, which would be highlights of this one. But that is the end of this particular series and the end of this particular road. Have I mentioned the fact that we've got an album coming out soon?
I don't know. Have you?
Full details will be in the show notes. Everywhere you can click on to pre-order, pre-save, pre-this, pre-that, pre-something else. And don't forget, if you're in the south, southeast, or can get there by any particular means, there will be an album launch gig at the 100 Club on Tuesday, the 28th of October. Full details again will be in the show notes. So I
Come
shall
and see me. Come and see us.
come and see everyone. We'll all be there running around in circles. So I'm going to shut up at this point and invite Rebecca to say a final farewell to what is currently Series 3 of Downs Your Way. Rebecca.
Well, I'd just like to say thanks to all the guests that have been on. I've enjoyed talking to each and every one of you. As I say, we weren't coming up with answers, because answers are quite hard to come up with. But at least if we open up the discussion, people get talking. People might find different ways around things, you know. It's just about discussion. It's just about honesty. So thank you all the guests. I really appreciate it. And I thank you all for listening as well. And if you can spread the word about the podcast, you know, to people that you think it might help, like people who are trying out in bands and whatever, that would be really cool. You know, just to let them know that, you know what, you're not that easy, and everyone knows it really. Big love.
Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.